Good morning, everyone. Today is Tinus Esther. Today is a hella good day. It's the third day of the May Purim, as we're going to learn about in just a minute. Today we are starting Maseches Megillah, right in time for Purim. Maseches Megillah will take today, tomorrow, Shushan Purim, and the day after. It's a 4-day thing. It's a 4-day Masechta, and we're going to be learning about Purim on Purim. Unbelievable. Yes, we'll have tomorrow. We're going to give shiur after the Nate's Minyan, maybe 7:45, maybe 8 o'clock. Definitely not doing shiur tomorrow at 9 o'clock. No way. Okay, here we go. Wednesday will be announced as we get closer. It's always a fun day. Today's shiur is Lili Nishlas Aaron Nachman Sucha Kohen Yishol Baruch Eben Shem Sabrach Sav Shmuel Lib B'Biram Moshe Ben Yosef Menesh also have an aliyah. It's also the year of Moshe Feinstein today, I believe. And a special schus for Mordechai and Esther. Today, Tinus Esther. And before Shlema for Adar Basleach, Chana Pesach Basyanta, Yisrael Baruch Aleh, Rachel Bas Pesach Zelda, Avi Yisuf Ben Risha, Chai Bas Dama Bela, before Shlema B'Sok Shai Chal Yisrael, and as a schus for Natali Tzvi Ben Rivka Blima, and Shalom Yehuda Ben Chai Sar Mindel, Shefer Bracha Batzlach and all their endeavors, and as a special schus for Gans Klal Yisrael, what's going on, massive Israel right now and around the world. Maybe be to see the good statement Beheri Benu Mamish today. Here we go. Mesechus Megillah, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Aleph, Megillah Nikris, B'Achad Asar, B'Shteim Asar, B'Shlosh Asar, B'Arba Asar, B'Chavish Asar, Lo Pachos, Lo Yoser. So generally, we know that Purim is celebrated on the 14th of Adar in most places, and in walled cities, in walled cities from the times, on the 15th. We'll get to what a walled city is momentarily. However, um, in regards to reading the Megillah, the Mishnah starts off that you can read the Megillah on the 11th day of Adar, the 12th, the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th. You have 5 days to read the Megillah, but not earlier than the 11th and not later than the 15th. You have a 5-day window. So Mishnah explains. People who live in cities that were surrounded by a wall in the times of Yoshua ben Nun, they read the Megillah on the 15th of Adar. I'm pretty sure Yoshua did not read the Megillah on the 15th of Adar because there was no Megillah to read in the time of Yoshua. But we're assuming that but if there was a city that had a wall around it in the times of Yoshua ben Nun, then they read the Megillah on the 15th, even though he himself did not. But okay, fun fact. Kefarim v'yaros gedolos korin ba'abras. So people lived in villages and large towns that did not have a wall. They read the Megillah on the 14th of Adar, which is tomorrow. But those who live in villages may, and they may push up the reading of the Megillah to the Yom HaKnesset, to the day of assembly, that is before the 14th. So what's Yom HaKnesset? Yom HaKnesset, the day of assembly, is either Monday or Thursday, when the village residents, they would go into the cities, into the towns to take care of business and to go to courts and to their shopping, whatever. Do what they need to do in the big cities, and so they can read the Megillah on Monday or Thursday that precedes Yadal Adar. And we're going to talk about how that works out on the calendar now. Here are all the possibilities. Kate, how is it possible? Right? If the 14th day of Adar falls on Monday, so let's say if the 14th fell today, today's Monday, today's the 13th, but let's say it was a let's say today was the 14th. And the villages and large towns would read the Megillah on that day because all the villages would be coming into the large towns today. And those who lived in walled cities would read it tomorrow. Tomorrow would be Yerushalayim. If the 14th falls on Tuesday or Wednesday, like it is this year. Right? Tomorrow is the 14th of Adar. So cool, by the way. Okay. Kfarim Magdimin Yom HaKnisa. And those who live in villages, they would read their Megillah on the previous Yom HaKnisa, which is today, Monday. Today would be the Yom HaKnisa. Or if so if tomorrow was the 14th, which tomorrow is the 14th, well, if tomorrow is the 14th, then today would be the 13th, they read today. And if the 14th was on Wednesday, then today would be the 12th. So they would push it up to today. Those who live in large towns would read it on tomorrow, on the 14th, which is either tomorrow, which is this year, or on Wednesday. Sometimes, but not okay. And those who live in the walled cities will read on the following day. So if tomorrow is the 14th, then Yerushalayim and the walled cities will read it on Wednesday, which is happening this year. And if the 14th was on Wednesday, then Yerushalayim and the walled cities will be reading it on Thursday. If the 14th falls on a Thursday, so the villages and large towns will read on that day on Thursday. And those who live in the one cities like Yerushalayim and such read on Friday on the 15th. Shabbos, if the 14th falls on Shabbos, which happened last year, and those who lived in villages, they push up their reading of the Megillah to Thursday, to the 13th of Adar. Those who live in large towns and walled cities read on that day on Friday. So it comes down that the walled cities are reading on the same day as the big cities because you cannot read the Megillah on Shabbos. So the walled cities would read it, which happened last year. Last year, Purim was Friday, Yiddah was Friday. So the Anshe Yerushalayim and everyone else, they all read the Megillah Thursday night, Friday. And whereas we had they officially like a one-day Purim on Friday, Yerushalayim had a three-day Purim, but they read the Megillah on Friday. And they had their other parts of Purim on Shabbos and Sunday, but not Kriyas Megillah. Chal, yes, with Shabbos, if the 14th falls on Shabbos, which does not happen in our current calendar. And those who live in villages and large towns push up their reading to the previous Yom HaKnisa, which would be Thursday. And the walled cities would read it on Sunday on the 15th. So there's a 3-day gap between the two readings. Right. Even the big cities, according to this thing, that they would read the Megillah on Thursday, not on Friday. Very interesting. Hallelujah, Yosachar Shabbos, if the 14th falls on Sunday, they would push up their Kriya to Thursday, to the previous Thursday. And those who live in the big cities, they read it on Sunday the 14th. And the rest and all the walled city people, they read on Monday the 15th. So that becomes a bigger to do. Okay. Here we go. So now we discussed who reads what when. Now we got to talk about what are the definitions of these cities? It's a Mishnah Gimel. Ezehu Yer Gedolah. What's considered a large town? Kosh Yeshba Asara Batlan. Any city in which there are 10 idle men. This means people who are paid by the tzibur to not work, so that they can always be in the shuls at the time of tefillah. There's always have a minion in the shul. Maybe it's a kola, maybe it's something else. You always want to have a minion in shul. If there's less than that number of men who are paid to be in shul, it is a village. That's an interesting definition. Okay, so Be'elu Amru Magdim Lo Ma'achad. Regarding these days for reading the Megillah, the Chamas that we do the mitzvah earlier, and we do not do it later. So instead of reading the Megillah on Shabbos, we read it before Shabbos and not after Shabbos. Aval, Sman Atzik Hanav, regarding the time of bringing the korban eitzin to the korban discussed at the end of Tainus yesterday, and the Tisha B'av, and as far as the Tainus of Tisha B'av, and Chagiga, and the korban Chagiga, which is brought on Yontif. It has to be brought on the first day of Pesach, and the first day of Sukkot, and on Shavuos. So if you didn't bring it on those days, then you could bring it as Tashlumin for the rest of the week, on all those days. And obviously Tishma we're not makdim, we push it off. The hakel. And hakel, which is once every 7 years on the Sukkot after Shemitah, the 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 Melech Beis David goes to the base of English and he reads the entire Sefer Devarim. So that if that fell out on, and it's always the first after the first day of Sukkot. Okay, so if the first day of Sukkot was Friday, that means that the second day, which would be the first day Chol Hamoed, which would be Shabbos, then it's not right on Shabbos; it's postponed until after Shabbos. Um, in all these cases, Ma'achim, Demon, we do it later. We do not do it earlier. We push all these things to after Shabbos and not before. Megillah is the only exception. Even though the Chama said that we do Kriyas Megillah earlier, we do not do it later. Mutarim behesped u'metanios u'metelos evyanim. On those earlier days, when we read the Megillah, we are allowed to have a spedim and tanesim and perform the mitzvah of Mataras Evyanim. So, for example, if today is the Yom Kippur, today's the Gimel. So, if you're in the villages and you were being mocked to read the Megillah today, because you're going into the cities and read the Megillah today on your Gimel Adar, so today's also a Tainus. So, even though you read the Megillah, you still have to fast, and you can still go to Levaya. If Moshe Feinstein was nifter on your Gimel, so you still go to a hesped for on the Gimel, even though you read the Megillah today, because you went to the village, you had to go into the city to do the whole thing. It's a lot. I'm ready to know. You just said, Amos, when does this permission apply to a village that they can read it on the Knisa? It applies only to a place whose residents enter the town on Monday and Thursday. But if the place where residents did not go to the town to the city on Monday and Thursday, then they may not read the Megillah except in its proper time on the 14th of Adar. So if it's the minhag of makom to go into the cities on Monday and Thursday to do your business, then great. And if you don't do that, like how many people from Muncie actually slept down to the city on a regular day? Some people do, but a lot of people don't. Okay, so great. So you can read tomorrow. No problem. Okay, we'll talk about the leap year. As you know, once every few years, we have a 13th month, which is Adar Sheni. The Mishnah Dalet. Karus HaMegillah Adar Rishon. If they read the Megillah if they read the Megillah in the first Adar, with its Abra Shana, and then an extra month of Adar added to the year, Karus Adar Sheni, they must read it again in Adar Sheni. Now, nowadays we have the calendar race figured out. So we know what year is going to be Adar Sheni, what is going to be just Adar Pshuta. We know that. Back in the day when they had to do the Kaddish Al Pi Ria, Al Pi based as we learned previously. Then learned that in Bay, I think it was Beta. then they didn't know what year was going to be Adar Shin, what year was going to be regular Adar. So if they read the Megillah in the first Adar, then at the end of the month, they figured they made a calculation that they need to do a second Adar. So they would have to read it again. Ein bein Adar Rishon and Adar Shin. There's no difference between the first Adar, would be the 14th and 15th of Adar Rishon, and the 14th and 15th of Adar Sheni, Ala Kriyas and Megillah, except for the mitzvahs of Kriyas and Megillah, and giving a Taz of Yonim to the poor, which can be fulfilled only during the second Adar. Someone who did these mitzvahs in the first Adar has not fulfilled this obligation. Does that mean that if you had to sue this Purim or you give a Shalach Manas, that you're Yotze that in Adar Rishon? Could be, but you have to get stuck into the poor regularly. So you're definitely Yotze giving stuck in it. Mr. Hey, now the rest of this paragraph is not talking about Purim. This is talking about other circumstances. And since we're talking about Ein Bain, no difference between this and that, now we're going to continue that for the rest of the paragraph. So nothing to do with Purim itself. Ein Bain Yom to the Shabbos. There's no difference between Yom to and Shabbos except regard to food preparation. Yes, Shabbos you have 39 malachos, which include the isurim of Ochel Nefesh, and on Yontif, all those malachos of Ochel Nefesh, which are Asr and Shabbos, they are mutter. Most of them are mutter on Yontif. Ein Bein Shabbos Yom Kippurim. There's no difference between Shabbos and Yom Kippur. Except that someone who deliberately desecrates Shabbos is punishable by a court, a people, is based in, and it says that the kares, while the deliberate desecration of Yom Kippur is punished with kares, which is imposed by Beis Shammai. Mishnah Vav talks about the Darim, and different oaths. So, Ein Bein HaMudar Hana Mechaver LaMudar B'Mana Meichel. There is no difference between someone who is prohibited by a neder to receive any benefit from another person and someone who is prohibited by a neder to receive only food-related benefit from another person. Except that one who is forbidden to receive food-related benefit is allowed to set foot on the other's land and to use any of his utensils that are not used to prepare food. While one who is forbidden to receive any benefit may not engage even in these activities. Let's just go through this for a second. So the guy who made a neder to receive not to receive any benefit, that includes all forms of benefit because it did not specify any particular type. But the guy who made a neder to receive only food-related benefits, so he made the neder specify that he's answering benefits that lead to food, and therefore anything else would be fine. Okay, now we turn to different types of the darim. So that there are two main methods for which a person can obligate himself to bring the korban. One is that he's saying that I obligate myself to bring the korban, in which case he's committing himself to designate an animal later and then bring it to the Beis Hamikdash, and this, that's called neder. Like I promise I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to do it now. The second one is when he indicates a particular animal and says this animal is a korban, and he specifies it to shlamim, it's to this, to that. So with that statement, he designates the specific animal that he intends to offer, and all that remains is that he has to bring the animal to the Beis Hamikdash. That's called an adava. And then the Mishnah is going to talk about the difference between the darim and the davos. Ein bein the darim and the davos. There's no difference between the darim and that was Elishan and the Darim, Elishan and the Darim Chai Bachiyasan. So that one is responsible for the Darim, which means that he cannot bring the animal that he eventually designated if it died or stolen. He must bring another animal in its place. When the Davos Eno Chayiv Bachiyasan, but he is not responsible for the Davos, which means that if he cannot bring the designated animal, he need not replace it. Okay, because the nether was he has to bring a car, and specify what it was, so he needs to figure it out. But a dava, if that specific animal goes bad, then he's putter from bringing another one, according to the Mishnah. Okay, now we're gonna go into zav and zavus. So ein bein zav, ein bein zav harosh teiriyus the roesh shalosh. Other korbanot. No difference between a zav who has two discharges and one who had three. Um, both of them must count 7 days, in which they, um, you know, 7 clean days. That's a requirement for both of them. Other korban, except that the one who had three discharges must bring a korban on the day after his 7 clean days, while the one who only had two does not have to bring any korban. Now we're going to talk about a mitzvah. Mitzvah muchlat and mitzvah muskar. Mitzvah muchlat. Ein bein mitzvah muchlat. Ein bein mitzvah muskar and mitzvah muchlat ala priya or prima. There is no difference between a confined mitzvah and a confirmed mitzvah. So what happened here with the mitzvah? You know that a mitzvah was a person who contracted saras, certain type of spiritual skin affliction, which is not really known nowadays. It's not the same as leprosy. Leprosy is a physical thing, and saras is a spiritual thing. We can't really define it properly nowadays. But anyways, mitzvah is an avatoma, similar to a zav who had two or three emissions, and he is also to be in any walled city in Eretz Yisrael. So someone who shows signs of or symptoms of tsaras must be examined by a Kohen who can determine whether he is a mitzvah or not. If he has definite symptoms of tsaras, meaning that his skin is discolored with a whitish patch in which there are two hairs that are turned white, then the Kohen declares him to be a confirmed mitzvah muchlat. If his symptoms are not definite, if he has a whitish patch on his skin, but his hair is still dark, he is declared a mitzvah muskar, a confined mitzvah, meaning that he is confined to a room outside the walled cities for 7 days. After the 7 days, the Kohen inspects him again. If the Kohen finds that his condition has worsened, then he declares him to be a confirmed mitzvah. And even when this person is really confined, he shares the same laws as a excuse me, Emisar Mukhlat, with the following exception. So there's no difference between the two of them, Alapriya Prima, except with regard to letting his hair grow and tearing his clothes. A confirmed Mitzvah must let his hair grow and tear his clothes, while a confined Mitzvah need not do so. Ein bein tahar mitoch heskel tahar mitoch huchlat. There is no difference between a mitzvah who is declared clean after a state of confinement and one who is declared clean after a state of confirmation. Ela tiglachas utziporim, except for the requirement of shaving the hair and the ritual of the birds. When a mitzvah has been confirmed, when a mitzvah has been confirmed of shaving the hair and the ritual of the birds, when a mitzvah who has been confirmed is declared free of saras, he must shave the hair of his body and participate in a ritual that involves two birds. When a mitzvah who had merely been confined is declared clean, he does not do so. Mishnah Ches. Ein bein svarim l'tfilin mezuzos. There's no difference between the halachas um, of writing Svarim, of Tanakh, and the laws of writing tefillin and mezuzahs, except Ela Svarim B'chtavim B'cholashim, rather, except that all the books of Tanakh may be written in any language, but tefillin and mezuzahs ain't on Nechtavim Ela Ashuris, whereas tefillin and mezuzahs may only be written in Ashuris, meaning the Ksav of Hebrew that we use now. Whereas for the Sefer Tanakh, they can be translated in any language, written in any script. um, and they would also be tamei as such because they're a kalatoma. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, "Ah, b'svarim lo hitira shiftavu el yavanis." The Chachamim did not permit any Sefer Tanakh to be written in any foreign language other than Greek. Why? That's the pasuk Yafta Elohim Yefes Yishko Balei Shem. They should grant beauty to Yefes, and may he dwell in the tents of shame. That's it. That's indicated that the Greek language is beautiful, and that that the tents of shame is referring to the Bate Medrash, and therefore from this pasuk that the Greek language may be used in writing Sefer Tanakh, which should be read by the Yidden in the Bate Medrash. Yeah. So, but since the passage of time in ancient Greek became corrupted, then therefore that halacha was bottled. And even nowadays, you can translate it into any language because most people don't understand Hebrew. That's according to Mishnah Berurah. Okay. Ein ben kohen Mishnah Test. Ein ben kohen Meshua the Mishnah begadim el apar haba alkol mitzvahs. There is no difference between a kohen who's anointed with the Shem Mishnah, with the anointing oil, the one who really increased the number of his garments. Both of them had to bring the Kohen Gadol's bull annual kippur. So we know that regular Kohen wore 4 begadim, and the Kohen Gadol wore 8. So if a Kohen was before the Kohen Gadol, if he just put on the begadim, then that was fine. But so whether he had the Shem Mishka or he had to put him extra begadim, then they make a difference. Except for the bull that comes as a chatas for being over on any of the mitzvahs. If an anointed Kohen Gadol mistakenly ruled that a forbidden act, which is punishable by kares, is mutter, and then he performed the act, he must bring a special type of Kohen Chatas. This applies only to an anointed Kohen Gadol, and the Kohen Gadol who merely put on his begadim would bring a regular Chatas and not a special one. Okay. Now we're going to compare Marco Hagadol. And Ben Kohen Mishamish the Kohen Sha'avar. There is no difference between the serving cut Kohen Gadol and the retired Kohen Gadol. The par Yom HaKippurim Asir Seif, except for the bull offering offered, the bull offered by the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, and the 10th of an Ephah, which is the Minchas Chavita, which he brought every day. These are brought only by the serving Kohen Gadol and not the retired one. So even the retired Kohen Gadol, he must wear the Shmona Begadim of the Kohen Gadol when he does any voda, and he is forbidden to marry a non-virgin or a widow, even though he's no longer the Kohen Gadol. Once he has been the Kohen Gadol and he's retired, he still retains those halachos. Okay, the next two Mishnayos talk about places where korbanos were allowed to be brought. And as we know, the Mishkan was started off in the Midbar for 40 years. Then it went to Israel, and it was in Gilgal for I believe 14 years, and then 14 years, and then the land was conquered and divided, and then it went to Shiloh, where it was built up with walls and stone. It was in Shiloh for 369 years, and then it was went to Nov, Kohanim, and then it went to Givon. Between Nov and Givon was a total of 57 years, and then after that, Shlomo built the Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim. So when the Mishkan was in the Midbar and in Shiloh, and after the Beis Hamikdash was built, it was also for a person to build his own mizbeach or bama to bring korbanos on it. So when the Mikdash stood, or the Mishkan stood in Gilgal, Nov, and in Givon, bamos were allowed. Therefore, in those times, there were two types of altars. One was a bama, which is a bama katana. That was built by private people, and a bama gadola, which was the main mizbeach in Gilgal, Nov, and Givon. Funny that the word bima that we used comes from this. So we're not being mocked of any animals, but when we do our tefillah in our mikdash mat in our shul, there's a stickle like a korban, even though you're not shechting any animals on it. Maybe the kiddush, who knows? Mishnah Yud, and the Bama Katana. There's no difference between the korbanos brought on the major bama and the korbanos brought on a minor bama. Al Psachim, except for the Korban Pesach, which was allowed only on the major bama and not on the minor one. Because the minor one was only for personal voluntary korbanos. The Pesach is not. Which is a chiyuv, cannot be brought on a private bama. Zach, this is the real caution. Nidar b'nidav karim b'bama. Any korban that was voluntarily vowed or donated was allowed to be brought on a minor bama. The kosh ain't alone nidav el karim b'bama. Ain't no karim b'bama. But any korban that was not voluntarily vowed or donated, it was obligatory, was not allowed to be brought on a minor bama. And finally, Mishnah Aleph, Ein bein Shiloh the Yerushalayim. There is no difference between the Mishkan in Shiloh and the Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim. Ela sheb'Shiloh ochlim kochim kalim u'mais sheni b'chol haroeh. Except that in Shiloh, one was allowed to eat kochim kalim, anywhere within sight of Shiloh, but Yerushalayim lifnim menachoma. But in Yerushalayim, one can only eat these foods within the city wall. However, both here, Shiloh, and here in Yerushalayim, the kachim to korbanos with a great kedusha had to be eaten within the curtains, that is within the azara of the Beis Hamikdash. Finally, kedusha Shiloh yesh achar heter. There was permission to use bamos after the kedusha of Shiloh was destroyed. After Mishkan was destroyed, bamos were again matir. But there is no permission to use bamos after the Chomer of Yerushalayim. Once Shlomo built the Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim, bamos became aser forever. So instead, we just use barbecues instead. Joke. Okay, have a wonderful day. Have an easy fast and a faithful Purim. And we will continue tomorrow again after Nate's, probably around 7:30, 7:45, maybe 8 o'clock, and we will do Perek Bays of Megillah. Have a wonderful day. Faithful Purim and Yeshua and Chamas Klal Yisrael, Karov Mamish.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.